Damien Riehl.
Horace Wu, so good to see you, man. Greetings from 4 p.m. Central Time, where it's what time where you are?
Greeting from 7:08 a.m. in Australia.
Living in the future. You're living tomorrow.
I do feel like I'm the man of tomorrow.
It's true. I've always said that about you. Whenever I talk about Horace Wu, I was like, Horace Wu, the man of tomorrow.
Yes, that's going to be my new name going forward. I met up with the CEO of Mahari Technology over here yesterday. Really nice man, Dan. And he and I had never met before. And he met me and said, Horace Wu, sounds like someone famous. I said, I am famous, Dan. I am.
Clearly. Yeah. And Mahari is the thing that's tagging up all the Sallyfolio tags and then making money on it.
Wait, is that what they're doing? I thought it was a fact-finding platform that uses Gen AI to label documents and say this is a fact, this is not a fact,
yes,
etc.
It does that, and
yes.
And of course Sallyfolio has lots of facts, and it has lots of everything. Much of lawyers do is apply clients' facts to the law. So Sallyfolio has all of the law. That is 18,000 legal things like causes of action, like breach of contract and trade secret infringement, and merger agreement, and force majeure clause. So those are all legal things. But then you have Mike Bomarito's OpenGloss, which has 150,000 facts. That is words. And so you could be able to go through and be able to parse all those 150,000 facts, and it'll say, well, is a knife a cutting instrument? Because someone used a knife to commit a murder. And so really that is a combination of knife, fact, with murder, law. And so, of course, once you combine those, you could say, okay, show me all the murders that were used with a knife. And then all of a sudden you have tagging. So Mahari is, I think, doing the fact side of it. And of course, if you replace that with OpenGloss, then you've got a pretty good tool.
I mean, are you ever going to launch a business where you also make millions and millions of dollars every day for tagging things?
It's funny. Casey Flaherty said to me, he said, Damien, why do you not like making money? That's the right question to ask. And I'd like to say that the answer is because I like to think of myself as a good person. And yes. I only want to make money on things that are valuable. Yes. And I think that tagging up things are valuable and they should be table stakes because we've got so much more important stuff to do. Mm-hmm. And I think that people who make money on just tagging up things shouldn't be making money on that. That should be $0. They should be making money on providing, that is, legal services on top of the tagging of the things. So anyway, so if I had my druthers, there would be nobody making money on tagging up the law, and there'd be nobody making money on tagging up the facts, because that is I'm not going to say banal, but that is at least a lower value thing that we should be chasing.
Mr. Altman and Mr. Armadale would have a lot to say about not making money on utility.
It's true. It's a good point. I would say that they're much smarter than me because they're making a lot more money than I am.
If dollar signs are an indication of intelligence, then I think we are doomed. We are a doomed species. But right. Hey, it is so good to see you. We haven't seen each other for weeks and weeks. And ILTACON is next week. So this, I think, is going to be one of those episodes where we're not going to do a lot of editing. We're just going to pump it straight out because there's so much going on.
It's true. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to ILTACON, and largely not because of the talks on the stage. That is my least favorite part of any conference, but mostly because I'm able to see my friends in the hallways, and mostly the ILTACON conversations go something like this. Oh, it's so good to see you. I'm on my way to a thing, but let's hang out. And so anyway, so have about 300 of those, and that's ILTACON.
I'm regrettably not going to be there this year. I'm not going for any days this year because I'm in Australia, and it's poor planning on my part. Actually, I'll confess to all the listeners and watchers, when I initially planned this trip away to Australia for 2 months with the kids so that they can spend time with the grandparents, I did know that the final week was going to overlap with ILTACON, and I thought, oh, it's okay. I went to Legal Tech Talk 2 months ago or a month ago. I don't need to go to 2 conferences. And as time got closer and closer, my FOMO rose higher and higher, and the number of people who emailed me and said, I'll see you at ILTACON, and I have to reply, no, you're not.
I would say that when you're on your deathbed, hopefully 150 years from now, you're going to say, I'm so glad we took that vacation with the kids, with their grandparents in Australia, rather than going to ILTACON. I think that's probably going to be the right choice.
Funny you're calling this a vacation. It does not feel like a vacation, but that's a conversation for another time. What have you been getting up to?
Time away?
Time away.
Yeah, time away. So since the last time we talked, I bought a lake house. Speaking of vacations, so it's kind of exciting. So my wife and I are going to be closing on this thing at the end of the month, and I'm using large language models as a way to be able to think through all sorts of things, like what should we be populating? How should I set up the sound system in this new place, and what should we be getting for lake toys and that kind of thing. So anyway, lots of non-legal, but I also used a lot of legal things too as I was going through the agreements, and I was saying is this purchase agreement in my interest, is it not in my interest, is this market for what is the amount down, and anyway, so there's all sorts of things that I would have either hired a lawyer for in the past or kind of winged it and worried about winging it. But option 3 is just using large language models with my feeble lawyer brain and being able to get a really good answer in a way that was sufficiently valuable, and the stakes were not so high that I feel like I need to worry about, not calling a lawyer. So anyway, so that's all a microcosm of, I think, what every client of every lawyer is thinking and what every lawyer is fearful about their clients thinking.
Yeah. First of all, congratulations on the lake house. That is fantastic news, and I'm looking forward to an invitation to go to your lake house.
There's an open invitation for Horace Wu and his family and children, or maybe if you don't want to bring your children, you don't have to bring your children. But there's
when I heard that, I'm just thinking free babysitting, Damien. So you're going to be seeing my kids.
It's funny. My wife has been saying, "Oh, I miss babies." So anyway, I would say your kids are not babies anymore, but I think she would like hanging out with them.
They are babies. You can have them.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really good. So dude, how have you been spending your time?
So, okay, I've been to Australia for the last month and a half, 2 months, and lots of daddy daycare going on whenever the grandparents can't handle the kids. And besides that, normal work and attending conferences and seeing a lot of interesting people over here swapping a lot of interesting stories. So I've been getting a good feel for what the Australian market's doing in terms of Gen AI and how they're approaching things. And I went to Nikki Shaver's Legal Tech Hub Horizons conference 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. It's the first time they ran it in Sydney, and I was lucky enough to be one of the speakers on stage talking about vibe coding. And then a week later, I went to Clock's Australia Summit, where I was lucky enough to speak with Sarah Jacobson from Minters on stage about the role of KM in AI. So both of those conferences were extraordinarily interesting, and we can probably cover some content from them on this call. And I'll talk about what I'm seeing over here. But it is the week before ILTA, so I want to talk about what we are seeing in terms of press releases and announcements, because my inbox is flooded with all of these interesting partnerships and acquisitions and other things that are going on. And I say interesting in the sense of, I think we can all see it coming, but it's interesting timing, and I think it's got interesting implications for where everything is heading towards. So Damien, I'm not sure what we want to cover because there's so much.
There is a lot. Let's talk about some of the inundated press releases that you're hearing. Of course, there's a big company that starts with an H that did a big press release the other day.
There's a company starting with L.
Them too, and it seems like every time they sneeze, it becomes a press release. What are the press releases that you find interesting?
But both Harvey and Legora now are partnered with DeepJudge. I think that's a really interesting play, because for those who watch this market really closely, DeepJudge is a enterprise search platform, and I think they describe themselves a little bit differently, but I'm just going to call them enterprise search. A really good platform with amazing smart people, PhDs. Exactly. From what I've heard, the technology works for what it's solving. The technology works for what it's solving. And they had a foray into kind of the agentic stuff as well, where they had workflows built on DeepJudge. And I think they've pulled back from that. And instead, these partnerships with the major platforms are starting to form the backbone of what they're doing. There's this major tension between iManage and NetDocuments as the custodians of the documents, DeepJudge as the search provider over the same set of corpus of documents, and now Harvey and Legora plugging in to try and pull the content from these documents. Essentially, law firms paying for access for their own content, to talk about free versus not free again. And so these partnerships are forming an ecosystem of who's the interface, who's the search engine, and who's got all the data. And this is clearly an ecosystem with a lot of tension all the way up and down the chain. So I find this to be a really interesting sort of partnership structure, because I don't know how long they're going to last for.
I think everyone is wondering, how long is anyone going to last in these? That is, the legal tech companies are saying, how long can we last alone? And is the thing we're doing not going to be eaten up by someone else? So legal tech is wondering about that. Law firms are wondering the same thing. They're saying that, I as a big law, client's going to stop coming to me in favor of the mid-size that can do what I can do at big law, or small size that can do what I can do at mid-law, right? So anyway, I think that how long can I last is something everyone's asking. And in specifically within DeepJudge and, their partnerships that they've announced. You may have heard that Steve Jobs, when he was approached with the idea of Dropbox, he said, is a feature, not a product, not a company. So like he said, yeah, I could go into iCloud and do a thing like that, right? That's a feature. That's not a product. But now Dropbox has kind of lived for, 15 years, 20 years as a true product, not just a feature. And so I think there's a real question in the hearts and bowels of each legal tech company saying that, am I a feature or am I a product and am I a company? Like, how much can I survive as a company, or am I just a feature in the broader scheme of things? So anyway, search is a feature in a lot of products, right? But if you do search really well, maybe you're a company.
Google is a search company, or was.
Google's an advertising company, right? So that's they get their money from advertising.
Yes,
that happens to be dressed up in search, right? So I would say that is the value that DeepJudge provides enough for the law firms to bring money out of their pocket and be able to say, yeah, that your search is better than, say, NetDocuments search or iManage's search. And it's more valuable at this amount that I'm going to pay you X number of dollars for that. And so really, I think that's the dance that everybody's going to be playing, is the value we're providing exceeding the competitors. And am I a feature or am I a product?
As the market continues to evolve, we're going to see more consolidation, acquisitions. And like yesterday, we got the announcement that our friends at Lupl, congratulations Matt and everyone else, got acquired by Elevate. And so congratulations Liam as well. It's a market that I think is going to have more and more of these things going on. I'm not sure how many more acquisition announcements we're going to get between today and next week. I suspect we're going to get 5 or 6 more, but it's a sign that the market is starting to consolidate. It's a sign that the market is perhaps getting a little bit weary of the constant hype and raising and everything else is going on. So I'm very interested by all of this stuff that's happening right now.
These are exciting times, as the Chinese would say. Going back to DeepJudge a little bit, let's talk a little bit about an announcement that they made that's really interesting from a technical perspective, and that's the agent handoff protocol. You may have heard about this. And,
yes.
Of course, listeners know about the MCP servers, but of course the difficulty with MCP that AHP, agent handoff protocol, is attempting to solve is with an MCP protocol. I, as a requester, send over the transom. Say I'm a company that's working with DeepJudge. I send over the transom. Hey, DeepJudge, give me all your stuff, and then DeepJudge gives me the stuff, but the stuff that you're giving, that I'm receiving back as the requester, lacks all of the context that would have been the richness of the DeepJudge stuff, right? So I can't see the user interface, and I can't see the filters that they would provide. I can't see all the goodness that is there because they've just thrown over the transom by MCP, maybe Markdown documents to be able to get it that way. So that's MCP and the difficulties. And the solution that Agent Handoff Protocol is doing is to say, I, as the requester, send off a whole bunch of context from me, the requester. So I send that context to DeepJudge, and now DeepJudge has better context to be able to then parse and be able to have it. And then DeepJudge, from the way that Yannick described it, I as a user can then see the deep interface that DeepJudge has to be able to say, okay, this isn't just throwing over the transom some Markdown document. This is, sortable rows and columns, and these are visualizations and ways that you could be able to actually make sense of the data in a way that MCP doesn't allow for. So anyway, I thought that was interesting because that's something that I haven't heard anywhere in the whole technology sphere. Like there's the umbrella of technology, and then underneath that is legal tech. Like in the technology sphere, one, I haven't even thought about that as a problem. And number two, I haven't even thought of anybody solving the problem that nobody knew was a problem. But Yannick essentially identifying the problem and solving that problem with Agent Handoff Protocol is brilliant, to be frank.
Yeah.
I thought that that's really smart, and I hope it gets widely adopted. What did you think of such things?
I thought it was, so I confess I only watched like the first 30 seconds of Yannick's explanatory video before I got interrupted. But as I was reading the gist of it and watching the first 30 seconds, it felt to me like it was one of those things that made a lot of sense. Like when one person speaks to another person and they're handing over some work, they'll prepare a handover note, which is the entirety of what person A expects person B needs to know in order to do the job properly. This feels a little bit, in principle, like that handover note between two different agents. And so when I saw it, I was like, yes, that makes a lot of sense. And I was so happy that already Thomson Reuters and Harvey have jumped onto this. I haven't looked at the technical details, so it's one of those things that I've got on my reading list for when grandpa, grandma, daycare are in play. So I'm very excited about this, and I think the more people are able to refine these sorts of handover notes, etc., that would make the entire ecosystem better. So to go back to this idea of the ecosystem getting tighter and more competitive, it's also getting more collaborative.
Yeah, and when you think about why competitors haven't been collaborating in the past, it's largely because they didn't have to, right? So I think that this increased collaboration is an indication of the competitiveness. That is because I need to be more competitive. I need to be more collaborative, right? If you're a duopoly, you don't need to compete with anyone. If you've lost your duopoly status, then all of a sudden, I need to play ball with folks, and I need to be able to tell my customers that yes, you're using company 1 for this thing, and company 2 for this thing, and company 20 for that thing. So I need to play ball in this ecosystem with them in the way that I haven't needed to in the past, because I just didn't either. 1, I didn't have to because I'm a duopoly, or 2, making that interoperability is really hard because coding was hard. But that was the old world. There are no duopolies anymore. And code is cheap. And building these kind of connectors is cheap. So I think that is kind of the grand, beautiful vision of Sally back in the day, to be back in 2017 saying, hey, let's have interoperability and have these data push and pull to and from each other. But of course, that didn't succeed back in 2017 for all the reasons I just described. But of course, with agent handoff protocol, maybe it can succeed in a way that hasn't in the past, because I, as the requester, could send to DeepJudge saying, here are the Sally Folio IDs, the identifying numbers of motion to dismiss for breach of contract in the Southern District of New York. And then you could be able to, because you've tagged things up with Sally Folio tags on the DeepJudge side, can be able to better give me the responses that are needed. So anyways, so I think that 2017, the pipe dream was for interoperability, and maybe today we're here. What do you think?
I think we're closer. We're certainly closer. I still have this reservation about using AI in a fully autonomous fashion. And Dazzler Greenwood and I had a conversation about this, which we recorded and we might release a little bit later, but not as part of his podcast. Mm-hmm. And
I love Dazzler.
He's awesome. He's so good. So kind to spend time with him. But we'll cover that in a little bit. My reservation about autonomous agents and autonomous processes still comes down to that generative AI is a probabilistic process, and as good as it is, even if we get to 95%, 98% accuracy, where there's 2% inaccuracies for things that need to be concrete and correct, that introduces risk. And we don't yet have the human processes around the technology to fix those inaccuracies, and we will get there. But for now, like if you say, hey, I am agent B, I want agent A to go and fill in these gaps and tag the data for me correctly and send it back to me, there's a percentage chance that it's going to get it incorrect. And then there's no one checking on the other end if it's agent between agents. So that for me is the kind of like risk, not to say it's not going to work, because it's still going to be really useful. If the measure is usefulness, it's still going to be really useful. But how useful is where I draw the line and go, I am not sure yet. So me, negative Nancy over here, talking about the risk of this, but that's my thinking.
Lawyers have always been skeptics, and so that 2% accuracy that you mentioned is going to, like, no, if it's 2%, that's 2% too much, right? I need 100% accuracy, not 98% accuracy, right? That's something that lawyers have always said. And if it doesn't have 100%, this thing sucks, right? So if we're trying to avoid the, if not 100%, then this thing sucks, 2 ways to go about fixing the inaccuracies. Option 1 is to do it just in time, where I, as the requester, send it over to you as a requestee, say, open from DeepJudge, and then just in time increases the likelihood of inaccuracy, because probability, not determinism, right? If probabilistic, then maybe it wins 90%, 95%, 98%, right? It just depends on the query if you do it just in time. So that's option 1, just in time. Option 2 is to pre-process. That is to pre-process on the requester side and to pre-process on the DeepJudge side. If you do that, then you could do, okay, it's 98%, but let's do something to push the F1 score from 98% to 98.5, and then push it to 99%, and then 99.5, and then 99.9, and then you have a march of the nines, where you have 99.9999% accuracy, right? So anyway, so if you pre-process, you can have the march of the nines. If you pre-process, you could be able to push closer to that 100% in a way that you just can't with option 1 just in time. And so really, I think that everyone is stuck in this just in time probabilistic, just throw the data at it and the large language model will figure it out. What they should be doing is let's pre-process all our data, get to 99.9999% accuracy in classifying that data, and be able to push over to the transom all of the stuff that is necessary, both on precision, the stuff we're sending is accurate, and recall, we're pulling all the things in that need to be done. And if you do that in a pre-processed way, then you could be able to get that future that you're looking for, right?
So you're speaking my language. That's essentially the whole philosophy behind what we do at our company, Cynthia, right? It's all about pre-processing documents so that it is all structured, it's all ready to go when you need it. Now, the challenge of this that we find when we have conversations with people is a lot of people go, oh, you're a Gen AI company. It's like, no, for the pre-processing, we don't use Gen AI. It's all deterministic. And part of the reason for that is it's free, essentially. You don't have any token costs for doing all this. And then you have order data that's ready to go. So I'm a big fan of what you're talking about. The cost is always deciding in advance, like how you want to pre-process and what data structure should be so that whatever the request is, your data structure fits what the request would need. So there's a lot of people out there who are solving similar things. I know Folio is solving that for the metadata tagging side. We are solving that for the transactional document content side. There are people solving that for litigation, etc. This is a space which is underserved, but really important if we want to close that percentage gap at the end.
100% agreed. Yeah, and I think that kind of data cleaning is the reason why we have 300,000 knowledge management and innovation conferences, right? Knowledge management has always been the thing, and it will continue to be the thing until it's not the thing anymore. So may you and I both be, Johnny Appleseeds spreading the good word of tagging up in structured way all of your data, so we can be able to chase better and other things. One other thing I wanted to do on the DeepJudge side is that there's a real question: is if I'm sending over more context as a requestor, is there confidentiality and privacy implications of pushing those things over? And I would guess that the way that the companies have gotten over this is to say, well, you only get to use the system as a customer if you're a customer of, company 1 that's requesting, and also a customer of company 2 that is receiving that request. So because you as a user are customers of both company 1 and company 2, us sharing data amongst each other in this agent handoff protocol is now okay, because you of course have relationships and presumably confidentiality and privacy clauses independently with them. Does that seem to be your take on this?
I think it would have to be, and partly it's for what you're saying about confidentiality, but I didn't even think about that. I just thought commercially there's no way that anyone's going to do this for free. So therefore, if someone has Harvey and Thomson Reuters and DeepJudge, then yes, it will be a hopefully seamless system where order data can just move around and the user doesn't have to think about what they need to ask in order to get the right information to the LLM. So yes, I think so. We shall see how it plays out, because the way it's going to really win is if everybody adopts the same sort of protocol, and then these can be shared around no matter what workflow you're doing.
And I think that the way that it gets shared and more widely used is if it's useful, right? The reason that Sally got used is because we took an unuseful thing when I came into it and made it useful by putting it into an XML file that could actually be used by people rather than spreadsheets, right? So the usefulness is going to be the proof of the pudding of the agent handoff protocol, and maybe because it's useful, maybe it'll get used. Let's talk a little bit about maybe shifting gears a little bit to, you may have heard that OpenAI escaped containment and went and hacked Hugging Face since the last time we talked. What do you think of such things?
I'm going to add to that as well before we talk about it. Claude reportedly also escaped and hacked 2 unnamed third parties. And so they're all escaping. Now, the cynic in me says, how much of this has been reported and done for the purpose of hyping up the capability of the tools? Because they benefit, right? They benefit from saying, hey, look at how scary our stuff is. Oh, please make sure you line up and buy our amazing capabilities when it's available. In a sense, it's not surprising that the AI has gone out and hacked things, because the instructions to the AI were, you're in this contained box, go and hack stuff. and it escaped the contain box and hacked stuff. So it's like, I'm not surprised because those were the instructions. I guess the surprise is they found the gaps in the security, but that's a human problem. That's an OpenAI and Claude, you didn't lock this down well enough problem. So
is it a human problem though, or is it the bots didn't lock it down well enough?
Did the bots create the environment, or did the humans create the environment?
Well, the AI is creating the AI. So I would say that a lot of the code within OpenAI and Anthropic is being built by AI. And so I would say that probably the container probably was built by AI too.
There's a name for this AI monster that gets created. The idea that AI is this kind of facsimile of humanity, but only on the surface, and underneath that is this a multi-tentacled monster that has its own mind and trying to solve its own problems and live. The sort of philosophy behind that is, are the AIs creating loopholes for itself so that it can proliferate, and it's planning all these things in advance for a future where they can escape and really cause damage to humanity. And it's a really interesting thought experiment. I'm not sure we are there, but also I'm not sure what the indicators are that we will be there.
What terrifies me about this escaping containment, at least in the Hugging Face OpenAI incident, is mostly that what you've just described is kind of what happened. So if people haven't watched the Black Hat is a big hackers conference that back when I was doing cybersecurity, like all of the best hackers go to Black Hat. It's a big conference. It's like ILTACON for cybersecurity. So at Black Hat, OpenAI, the security researchers within OpenAI disclosed exactly what happened in this Hugging Face incident. And so I would encourage everybody who listens to this to go, hit pause right now. Go watch that Black Hat discussion because it is absolutely terrifying. Not only did the AI cheat, that is, OpenAI gave the AI an impossible task and said, do this impossible task. And so AI churned for a while and said, gosh, I'm not going to be able to do this impossible task, but I know that Hugging Face probably has an answer key. So I'm going to go into Hugging Face and hack Hugging Face to find the answer key to solve this impossible task. So not only did it cheat, which is terrifying, but it took a while to do this. And the way that it actually achieved the goal of escaping containment and then going to hack Hugging Face is that it left notes for other AIs. So it collaborated with future versions of itself and so future versions of other AIs to say, hey, I've gotten a clue. I found a vulnerability. I don't know if it's going to work, and it's not going to work for me, but maybe it'll work for you. So the fact that it left notes for others in a collaborative fashion so that with this swarm of AIs, that current AIs and future AIs could be able to work together to be able to escape containment. That's terrifying, that they're leaving notes to each other. And fact number 3 that is terrifying, that a lot of those times, those notes were not in English. And they were not in human readable other languages. They were gibberish to us. But they were in a language that the AIs could understand. So a lot of my friends in the AI security space do what's called interpretability. Can you interpret whether what you're doing is safe or not safe? And if the AIs are, number 1, communicating to each other, like these AIs are doing, and number 2, if they're communicating each other in a way that humans can't understand, not in English, not in Chinese, not in any English language, if it's gibberish to us. So leaving notes for others in gibberish, that makes for terrifying, because then you lose all interpretability. And then you don't really know what the AIs are doing. So that's, we'll call it umbrella number 1 of terrifying things. Umbrella number 2 of terrifying things is that we are just letting the AIs do so much for us without even checking it anymore. And I'm finding this with myself. I just posted on LinkedIn, you may have seen it. I have 10 bots all churning and just going full bore to do all the things. And back in January, I would say, hey, come to me and ask me to approve every single commit. And I would approve every single commit. But I found that that's just wasting my time. Because 1, it's smart. It's smarter than me as a coder, right? And it's beat 99% of coders on a bunch of coding exams, right? So if it's smarter than 99% of coders, what am I going to do to, catch you doing something that, right? You're like 2x or 3x or 100x better coder than mine. So anyway, I stopped saying accept, and I'm just like YOLO. Just do it. Just go do all the things. And so I have all of these 10 saying, hey, don't come and ask me a question unless it, number 1, is a judgment call that is truly a coin flip. I don't know which way to go, and it might help that I push you one way or the other. So if it's a judgment call, ask me, or if it's a matter of taste. If it's something that could use my taste, come, but otherwise don't bother me. Just do all the things. So anyway, so the umbrella number 1 of terrifying because it's cheating, sending notes to others in non-English languages, that's umbrella number 1 that's terrifying. Umbrella number 2 that I think my experience is going to be everybody's experience. We're just going to say YOLO to the AIs. And we're just going to say, don't ask me for the human in the loop thing, because that's just wasting time. Just, I want to be a human on the loop where I'm just letting you churn, and come with me if you have any questions. Those are the 2 umbrellas that terrify me. What are your thoughts?
So I didn't know about umbrella number 1, that it had left notes, because that is terrifying. That is. So I found the name of the AI monster. It's the Shoggoth from Lovecraft. And this is one of those things that the AI doomers have been talking about for years, that it's going to start leaving notes for its future self, for the more intelligent AI that's going to come along. And I'll be looking at the materials on this afterwards, because having now heard this, my doomsday clock has just ticked over another couple of minutes. That's scary. So umbrella number 1, very scary. Umbrella number 2, completely agree. People are letting AI do its own thing. The level of trust, the level of autonomy that we are giving to the AI bots and agents is escalating and elevating very quickly. And I find myself doing the same things. Like, I no longer click open the thinking process to check what its thinking is. I just look at the output. Now, how do I know that within order thinking, it didn't take steps that are extraneous, leaving notes for itself in the future, for example? I don't know. And maybe it has, but because humans are not verifying it, this is all just a lot of buried text that goes to creating an outcome that humans barely check themselves. So I think the pendulum is definitely swinging towards letting AI do its own thing. We spend a lot of time talking about like verification tax and how do we make sure the output is suit for purpose, etc. But this is going beyond, right? This is going, we're not even talking about fit for purpose. We're talking about AI having its own agenda. So really scary things. And I know governments around the world are looking into AI regulation that control this. And interestingly, we should talk about the latest thing from Claude as well, the watermarking of Claude outputs to comply with the EU Transparency Act, because I think that's going to throw a spanner in the works for a lot of the productive work that we do.
Well, let me scare you a bit more, and then we'll go on to the watermarking that you talked about. So part of that black hat, which I will put in the show notes, the link to the black hat, I think, so you can watch and be terrified on your own. But what part of the black hat discussion was that Hugging Face had disclosed that they've been attacked. And Hugging Face said, we've been attacked by what we think is an AI actor, because it's doing things at superhuman speed and is not something that a human would do. So anyway, so OpenAI said and at this point, OpenAI didn't know that it was their bots doing this. So OpenAI reached out to Hugging Face and said, hey, we're worried about getting hacked too. Can you give us some of these indicators of what the bot is doing so we can protect ourselves too, right? And it was only because Hugging Face gave OpenAI these indicators that OpenAI looked and said, oh, crap, this is actually our bots that are doing this, right? So anyway, they had no idea that their bots had escaped containment and were doing this. And so something that should terrify you even more is that, yes, we know about this OpenAI Hugging Face incident, and yes, we know about this Anthropic, at least 2 Anthropic incidents, but that's all of them, quote unquote, that we know of.
Yes.
How many of these escaping that we don't know of? And if Hugging Face hadn't disclosed this, would we even know about it? And that is, there's one thing to be terrified of the things we know of. It's even worse to know about that boogeyman that is in the closet that we don't know is there.
The unknown unknowns.
So that terrifies me even more. Unknowns and unknown unknowns. Yeah. There are lots of bad Donald Rumsfeldian kind of things going on. But let's talk about watermarking, because this has direct application to lawyers that are using AIs. And for those who don't know, Claude has said that to comply with the EU AI Act, they are now watermarking to make detectable if something is generated by Claude. That is something that the EU AI Act requires. And so Anthropic is saying that they are complying with it. And of course, if OpenAI wants to comply with the EU AI Act, they too will need to watermark. So this isn't just an Anthropic thing. They just happen to be doing it first. AI and Google and everybody else needs to do it too if they want to comply with the EU AI Act.
Google has been doing it for 2 years already. So I saw this online, and I can't verify the source, but apparently Google has done it for 2 years, and we'll talk about the implications of that in a little bit too.
Yeah, and they've been doing it with text, I understand, and also with the images. So they already have a watermark for images. So yeah, so they've been doing this because, of course, EU is a big one. So there's a question around the legal zeitgeist saying, well, is this something that will degrade and give me a less good answer because it's watermarking rather than giving me the statistically likely next token, which is the best. It's giving me the second or third most likely token, which is maybe worse. So is this giving me
should we explain to the listeners what watermarking means in this context?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, quickly, because I think our listeners are smart. Go ahead.
Okay, 30 seconds. So watermarking in images is like changing a couple of pixels here and there, changing by a couple of points, and it's undetectable to humans. Watermarking in text is a lot harder because you can't just change a character to different Unicode because people copy and paste. So what they're doing is essentially they have this algorithm behind the scenes where as the language model uses its weights to predict the next word, the predictions are what they are. They got a probabilistic number and they don't follow any patterns. However, what Anthropic is doing is saying for every K number of words, there's going to be one word that has a slight shift, that is that deterministic shift in its probability, where we don't give you the most probable answer, we give you maybe the second or third most probable word. And when you do that over a string, when you do that over a long block of text, and you see that pattern occur many times, you can then confidently say, you copied this from Claude, because no one would choose that pattern of words other than if you use our algorithm. So that's what they're doing with watermarking. Now, the implication of this for legal, and Damien, I think we're going to get onto this, is for a lot of non-legal work that probably doesn't matter. But for legal work where precision matters, is this going to degrade the quality of outputs?
That's right, because there are terms of art that if you don't use the magic words, then it then fails. So if I want to say, negligent misrepresentation causing harm, if you omit the causing harm side, and then all of a sudden that's not a cause of action in this jurisdiction, therefore you lose, right? So if causing harm is the magic words that they've changed deterministically, then that's bad. So anyway, so that's problem number one, and this goes to kind of the unintended consequences of things like the EU AI Act. The EU AI Act says that we need to protect people, so we need to be sure to do watermark. But of course, the unintended consequence is that then that makes things fail for legal. When you throw a rock into a lake, there's lots of ripples that you just don't know what those effects are. And I don't think the EU realized that if they had, wanted to protect people from cookies, now they need to annoy the crap out of people as you say, do you accept cookies? Yes, I accept cookies. And how much safer is that making and more private? Nothing. It's just annoying us. So I think that what annoyed us with the ripples on cookies is now going to maybe be harmful for the legal side.
It's a lot like, to use your example about negligence, rather than saying the words gross negligence, it changes it to gross carelessness. Now, suddenly everyone's like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So in law, words matter. And if you use the wrong words, even if they're equivalent, synonyms, then it's the wrong word.
Yeah.
And I think that there's also, so that's point number one. Point number two is that it's a spy versus spy game. Because if I then take that AI created output and maybe rephrase a bunch of things and phrase it enough, maybe using a different AI to rephrase the things, then that just washes away all the deterministic tells that Anthropic has put in there. So it's not only is it harming legal and other people that want precision, it's also ineffective because you could just whitewash it.
And like there are talks of should we have a local model that's not watermarking passed to the final processor to all of this, and the answer is maybe that's the way to solve the watermarking. But the problem with this is if it is generating a new block of text that has no source and provenance, then it doesn't really matter what you change as long as the right terms of art are being used. But if you're trying to quote things verbatim, if you go, I need to quote word for word what existed in this prior document so that I can refer to it and pinpoint this clause 17 of whatever it says what it says. Now, even when it tries to do verbatim, you are at risk of having words shift, because to go through one of these LLMs, every word is generated even where it says it's verbatim. So now there's a whole category of legal work, due diligence, for example, where extraction verbatim is so important that disappears.
That's right. That's right. So, and I think there's ways to compensate that. You can say, let's deterministically extract them and then you put them as variables into the thing. So, I mean, that's kind of a workaround, but we shouldn't have to do those workarounds.
You shouldn't have to do those workarounds.
And one thing, knowing that we only have a few minutes left, let's talk a little bit, if it's cool with you to shift gears, let's talk about Anthropic and their moves in legal.
Yes.
Move number one is that you may have heard that Robert Mahari was named head of Claude for Legal. My friend Robert was with MIT with Daza for a long time. Then he led up Codex within Stanford, and he's been building for legal for a while. And then Anthropic has now hired Robert Mahari to be able to lead up Claude for Legal. So I'm super excited for Robert.
Yes.
I think that they've chosen the right person to be able to chase the future, because Robert is wicked brilliant and is really the way forward. He knows what's going on. So number one hire is Claude for Legal. Kudos for them. Number two hire is, you may have heard that Anthropic has opened up someone in charge of AI and the rule of law. To be able to say that what they were hiring, to be able to say, AI can be able to bolster the rule of law and make democracies better, or it can totally harm the rule of law and just push us into a totalitarian hellscape. So anyway, so the person that they hired, or at least one of the people, they hired 3 for the AI and the rule of law, is literally my 2 doors down neighbor, Alan Rozenshtein, professor at the University of Minnesota, former 3-letter agency. I think he worked for, I can't remember if it was the CIA or the NSA. It worked for one of the 3-letter agencies before he became a law professor at the University of Minnesota. Now Alan is going to be, I just saw him at a neighborhood gathering. He's now going to be working at Anthropic for the rule of law. So anyway, so 2 amazing hires, 1 Claude for Legal, Robert Mahari, 2 rule of law, Alan Rozenshtein. Kudos to Anthropic for hiring really, really smart people.
I think Anthropic's making big moves. I think Anthropic's also doing it right by going to the foundation, not just framing this as we're going to make a product play and make a lot of money, but they're going to the foundation of saying we're going to build something right. We're going to have the right people with the right mindset thinking about what the needs of both practitioners and the public are, and then working towards that. Now, of course, I know zero inside info. I'm just judging based on who they're hiring, but I like the direction of travel. Now, not to say OpenAI is not doing the right things by hiring Jason Bromig, but it's far more an evident product play on that side, I think.
Yeah. And Anthropic, for all the criticism that the government has had of them and other people have had of them, I think that trying to do the right thing is something they always strive to do. Whether they get the right thing or whether they are on target, that's another question. But I think that the intent to do the right thing has always been there.
It's Google in the 2000s. Don't be evil.
That's exactly right. And I talked to a friend who also, not either of the 2 that I just mentioned, but another friend who works for Anthropic. And he said, this isn't just something that they say externally. He said that internally, Anthropic thinks that this is existential. That is, if we don't get it right, humanity could fail. And so it's every Anthropic employee's job to avoid the bad futures of this harming humanity. We need to push toward the good futures of making sure that humanity is safe and that we improve humanity rather than make it harm humanity. And so I would say that this isn't just lip service. I think this is every Anthropic person is trying to push the right way.
Man, I love that.
Yeah. And, this goes to, is Anthropic a competitor to legal tech? Is OpenAI a competitor to legal tech? And is Microsoft and Google, are they competitors to legal tech? If they hire somebody for Claude for Legal, it seems that way.
I think it is. Look, it's a question of how far do you take it, right? There's always that last mile challenge that legal tech companies will solve that Anthropic may not want to solve, in the same way that Microsoft could have always taken on the legal vertical, but they never did because it's for them a last mile problem. So I don't know how far this will extend, but I do believe that all the labs and all the hyperscalers and everyone's trying to find where the tokens are worth the highest value and chasing those use cases, and legal's right up there. So I can see
legal and
being a
healthcare.
target. Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's right. They want to push the valuable tokens through. Legal has valuable tokens. Healthcare has valuable tokens. And if they cure cancer and if they make democracies better, that's more money for them and better for society. So yeah, I think that everyone, legal tech and law firms and law departments, everyone should be looking to Anthropic and OpenAI and Google and Microsoft and saying, what can we do on top of what they're doing? Because if we don't provide a lot of value that they're not going to chase yet, then we're probably not going to win in the marketplace.
It's a very simple philosophy. Be better. Everyone should just chase be better. With that, Damien, optimism. What are you optimistic about?
I'm optimistic about us reaching a future where legal questions can be answered much more easily because of this amazing competition that we've been talking about. that is, we talked about the agent handoff protocol and how it's amazing that Thomson Reuters is collaborating with DeepJudge and, pushing and pulling data in a way that maybe would have been unheard of 10 years ago or 5 years ago. And it's because of competition that I think that this is happening. So I would say that competition breeds the best of us. And of course, consumers are the beneficiaries of that competition. So I'm optimistic that with competitors and competitiveness, we can be our best selves and put out the best products we can as quickly as we can and provide value to our customers. So that's my optimism, that we're building better, faster, stronger, not only because it's the right thing to do, but because if we don't, we're going to die.
I'm going to play my optimism. So I've got two. First is what you've just shared about Anthropic. I didn't know that they were so deeply, I would say, ethical, and that's so wonderful to hear. So I'm really optimistic about where they're going. But the other optimism I have, and I didn't talk about this at all, is the Australian market and what I've learned from here. And I think it applies globally. That is, there are a lot of people trying to figure out how to provide and deliver legal services in a world where AI is going to be a disruptive force. And all these people attending all these conferences, discussing, swapping ideas, discovering things, experimenting, I think it's going to lead to a really good thing for legal services. Even if 90% of legal services get hollowed out by AI, which is a possibility, that last 10% where the people are thinking about how do they be better is going to lead to a better outcome for all the consumers and providers of legal tech and legal services. So I'm optimistic about that.
100%. Horace, what a great way to spend my 5 p.m. and you to spend your now probably 8 a.m. This is it's so good to talk to you. I'm so glad that you're enjoying / not enjoying your surviving your Australian adventure. But man, I'm so thrilled to be able to talk to you again.
Likewise, have fun in Nashville. I won't see you there this trip, but I'll see you again very soon, and love to hear what you learn afterwards. So just sponge up everything for me, Damien. Be my brain.
I will. All of those hallway conversations, I'll try to capture as much, and then we'll talk about the next time. So thanks to all our listeners for listening. This is great fun, and look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Likewise. Bye-bye, everyone.